Well, last Sunday, after getting out of the pulpit and back into the front row, my wife Karen taps me on the arm and she said, "Oh my goodness, you're sweating." And I said, "Babe, I was preaching on hell. What do you think? Like, what do you think would be happen? You know, it was toasty up there." And so last week we were talking about hell. This week we get to talk about heaven and the glories of heaven and the presence of God forever. And so I get super excited to preach a passage like Revelation 21. And really, for me, this series, these last 2 months have all really boiled up to this, because Revelation 21, I mean, this is what I think ought to lead you to be bold, courageous, strong, free from anxiety in 2024. You know, it's these truths in here that we get to hold fast to as the people of God, that give us a real sense of courage and safety and comfort. And so as we get going, I'm sure, like I mentioned in the announcements, that July 4th was probably a time where maybe you grilled up some meat and you enjoyed some fireworks in the sky, but ultimately what you got to do is you got to breathe in freedom. I want to make a comment about America for a second. For as many problems as she has, because she's got them, doesn't she? For as many problems as she has, it is a beautiful country. The freedoms that we get to exist, the things that we get to participate in, and it's so easy to take this country for granted. And as flawed as it is, as terrible and sad as the presidential candidates that we have, it's a beautiful country. And you know, I've seen over the years, in election years, you have maybe a celebrity or celebrities come forward and say, "Hey, if this person gets in, I'm out of here." And I just want to go on record and say, whichever old guy gets it, I will still be residing in these here United States, right? Like, no matter who gets it, I'm staying here, because this country is beautiful and it's awesome. And I have, on numerous occasions, have taken it for granted. We all generally can take these freedoms for granted. But nothing reminds you how beautiful this country is than when you leave, than to come back. So last November when we were in Kenya, there was just something about, you know, getting back into customs. When you see the U.S. customs, there's a real sense of relief. There's a real sense of safety, security. Like, finally, I'm back on U.S. soil, and this is great. And I couldn't wait to get through there, and I couldn't wait to get back up into my home. Why? Because I was craving Jets pizza. You know, I mean, after 10 days of eating goat. And you know what? That's a meal of honor over there. But what you realize is it's just a totally different world. And to demonstrate, I have just a couple of photos I'm going to throw up there for you to see. And these weren't even like the worst conditions of places we were at. It was just a matter of, I didn't always take my phone out and document every place that we were going. There was another, I believe one more photo I wanted to show you. You know, just... But you're over there, and it's just a different way of living. There, you know, you're driving along the side of cattle, eating trash on the street. Like, it's just a different world there. And then knowing, like, hey, I'm looking at that, and chances are somebody's going to eat that at some point, and they're going to think that it's delicious. And after a week of eating nothing but goat, I was like, get me home, give me some Jets pizza, and I will be good. I mean, you think about some of these really small things that the rest of the world is not privy to. And I remember while I was there, a question that I would ask people that could speak some semblance of English. Hey, have you ever been to America? Because believe it or not, sometimes you'll come in contact with people that have been, you know, in America. And more often than not, the expression back to that question is, "Oh my goodness, I dream about going to America." And we sit in a land that people dream of coming to and visiting and seeing and just participating in that freedom. But my guess is, chances are that in this room of people, though you live in a place that people dream about coming to, there's probably places that you dream about going to that are outside of our here, you know, beautiful country. right? You imagine places and you just wonder, hey, I wonder what it would be like to go there and to see that scene and to take in that beauty, what that would be like. You ever wonder what heaven's going to be like? Like for me, I've wondered, for all of eternity, like, will this beauty really be able to captivate my heart and satisfy my soul for all of eternity? Like, will it be that beautiful? Like, do you ever just wonder about what it will be like? Because I think everyone wonders about it, both Christian and secular. You see this happening in music. Right? You see Christian artists write songs and say, I can only imagine what it would be like, right? Like we know the I Can Only Imagine song. And it's coming up even more in the world, though. Flip on some country music later. If heaven is anywhere, it's a blue. Does anybody know that song? I'm just a really bad singer. If heaven is anywhere, it's a blue Tacoma. Nobody know it? Okay. How about this? If heaven wasn't so far away, I'd pack up the kids and take them out for a day. Show them their grandpa. Listen to the radio, people. Gosh, I'm the most secular person here, and I'm the pastor. This is a problem. And while we dream about going to this place and that place, and maybe for you've taken in some extraordinary beauty. And what you've learned is that the places and the beauty that surrounds our world doesn't ultimately satisfy. That its beauty will allure us for a time, but it won't be forever. I painfully learned this in going to Rome. Got the chance to go to Rome, and while there, do as the Romans, went to the Vatican. And just to see that art. I mean, I was there for 8 hours. I mean, just a full day. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm saving the best for last. I'm going to the Sistine Chapel to end the day. But for 8 hours, everywhere you turned your head, there was some sort of art, some sort of beauty that just captivated you, and you were like, wow, that's amazing. And you were just stunned by it. And then 8 hours later, walking into the Sistine Chapel, the thing that, Michelangelo and the ceiling, and you're taking it in, and in 8 hours' time, the allure of the art. It's not that it wasn't awesome. It wasn't that it wasn't beautiful, and I could acknowledge that, but it just didn't have that same thrill. And so if you ever get the chance to go to the Sistine Chapel first. That's the best advice I can give you, but it was just shocking to me after 8 hours how quickly something that's alluring can be just kind of taken from you, how quickly you're no longer just satisfied by what you're seeing. And so I think we can oftentimes wonder, will heaven be able to satisfy the desires of our hearts? Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, there are 3 wants which can never be satisfied. That of the rich who wants something more, that of the sick who wants something different, and that of the traveler who says, anywhere but here. He just acknowledges that for everyone, there's this sense that satisfaction on this side of the eternity, it just can't be found. Clive Staples Lewis once stated, if I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I've been made for another world. See, so it's like, if I go to the Grand Canyon, if I look up at the Milky Way, and if eventually it loses its allure, then this must not be home. And for us as believers, we can acknowledge that. We can say, hey, this world just ain't it. And at times, I think people have heard my preaching and how I preach about how this world won't satisfy, and they're like, man, you just sound like a shrew. It's like, no, I love this life. There's so many things I love about this life. You've already heard Jet's Pizza. I love kissing my beautiful wife. I love that the NFC Championship was played by the Lions last year. I mean, I love so many blessings in this life. My life is not void of blessing or joy, and yet I can share and echo Solomon. Under the sun, it's all vanity. That if all these joys are, if all these beauties are in an end of themselves, It ends here. It's not ultimately satisfactory for our hearts. I've heard it said, this world is the closest thing to hell the believer will ever experience. And so if you have a hard time just imagining leaving this world and what heaven could be like, and, well, I miss earth, this thing will be the closest thing to hell that you ever experience if you're a believer in Jesus. And for the unbeliever, it's the closest thing to heaven. This world will be the closest thing to heaven the unbeliever will experience, because there's still common grace here. There's still common grace here. But to think that, there's so many preachers and teachers out there. There's authors that write books like for the Christian, that it's your best life now. And I've heard pastors say, if it's your best life now, then you're probably going to hell. Right? Because for us, what we believe about the book and the Bible is that there's one day coming. I mean, our passage is dealing with that. One day coming where we're going to be removed from the presence of sin. I mean, that's the gospel. That's the gospel. The gospel is that yes, that we've been removed from the penalty of sin, that we're being removed from the effects of sin. But it's that one day, hopefully soon, we will be removed from the presence of sin. That sin will no longer have a place in our world, in our life, for a believer. And I think really that's the heart of the gospel that a lot of times we miss in churches, that we miss in the Christian life. I mean, I can so vividly think, most people, you say, hey, tell me the gospel. It's, well, Jesus went on the cross. He died for my sins. I've been forgiven. That's the gospel. That's part of the gospel. But what have you been forgiven of, and what have you been given now? The old man is dead and the new man has come, that you've been given new life, eternal life with God forever. Right? I mean, don't shut it short. Like Jesus ascending, ruling and reigning, and coming back for his people. Like, that's part of the gospel. That we have eternity with him and life with him. God with us. It's the story of the Bible. This is good news. And it's good news because there's bad news. I just said the Bible's a story from Genesis to Revelation. It's teaching us, it's telling us something. And so in the beginning, what you see is God with man, with man and woman, and he's dwelling with them in a perfect relationship. And then that perfect relationship gets fractured by sin. Humanity leaves the God that they love to be governed by their own desires and their own flesh and their own lives. And so now that there's this chasm between God and man, the whole story of the Bible is teaching us how God is coming back with his people. You see it in the Old Testament where there's the temple. I mean, it was God dwelling with his people once again. Through the prophets, as God speaking to his people through the prophets, it's God with us again. The person of Jesus in the world is God with us again. And Jesus then eventually says, hey, but it's going to be better that I go, because why? The Helper, the Holy Spirit, is going to come and live within you. What is that? It's God with us again. And then what we see here in Revelation is that the clouds part and God comes through his people, and it is God with us again. It's the story of the Bible. And so we see it most beautifully, like cherry on the top, is Revelation 21 and 22. Like Genesis 3 through Revelation 20 is all this story of how God is going to be one with his people again forever. And then there's Revelation 21 and 22, where it's just like this never-ending rest stop. Right? These last handful of weeks, maybe you've come in, you've been in here, and we're preaching about God's judgments, and we're speaking about God's wrath. Well, Revelation 21, 22, you don't see that. The wrath is gone. Evil's gone. It's God with his people forever. It's a oasis in the desert, these last two chapters of the Bible. Right? That it's joy to the soul. That we see that the eternity breaks in here, never to be disrupted by evil again. This is the way that everything is going to end. And the final reward for those who choose to hear and to hold God's promises, this is the life for you. This is the promise that lays in store for us. Paradise was lost in Genesis, and it's been fought up for until Revelation 20, and it's finally recaptured and restored in Revelation 21 and 22. These chapters are beautiful. So let's pick up in our text. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. John, once again, is showing us what he sees next, right? He says, then I saw. And so now he's just fast forwarding us. He's expediting us to eternity, right? God with his people forever. And if you're like me, you grew up in a world where your belief about how this all ends was that, okay, God ransoms his people, he takes his people, and then he looks at the earth and says, hey, that's all bad. I'm going to destroy it with fire. And then, hey, guys, also, I'm going to take us to the new heaven. And that new heaven was this far off celestial city, in some far off distant galaxy. Right? That's generally kind of the way that got communicated to probably most of us if you grew up in the church, about what heaven is, how this all ends and how this all comes together. The challenge is that that's not the only belief in the game. There's actually, if we're just taking John for his words, where does the New Jerusalem land? Does it land off into some far distant galaxy? Or what does John say that he sees? He says, it came down from heaven. And so there's actually another school of thought, another belief about what happens here is that the New Jerusalem is actually the world renewed. That the earth that we live on, that would be one day renewed by God. And I think that's consistent with Revelation 21 here. Because though he says that the old earth and the old heaven disappeared, when you renew something, what was once there is now disappear, right? It's no longer there. It's something made new. But again, there's different schools of thought. So you have this one group that would say, hey, no, the earth gets renewed, it gets remade. And there's passages of scripture that would support that argument in Romans chapter 8. But then you have another group that says, no, the world does get destroyed by fire. And I think you see that in 2 Peter 3. And so I want to show you these texts, and then I'll try to bring us back to a place that I think is orthodox in understanding of how this ends. And so here are some of the conflicting passages. In Romans chapter 8, here's what Paul writes. He says, for the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. Right? Paul is saying there, he's like, hey, that one day it'll be the home or the dwelling of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation has been growing together in pains of childbirth until now. And so Paul's making this acknowledgement. He's addressing all of creation. He's not just saying that, hey, sinners and people are looking to be restored. He says, no, the whole of creation is. Because if you go back to Genesis, what you see in the pronouncement against sin in Genesis 3 was that God actually curses the ground. Curses the very ground. He's like, yeah, you might try to run from the effects of sin because you won't be able to run far enough. Why? Because the ground itself has been cursed. All of creation has been cursed. And I've always marveled at that it's waiting in eager hope to be set free from its bondage. That it's waiting to be it's eagerly waiting to be set free from the curse of sin that it's had to endure. And why I marvel at that is because you can look out at a beautiful sunset. You can look out at a mountainous range. You can look out at the ocean. And as beautiful as it might be, according to the book, it's not as beautiful as it could be. It's not as beautiful as it could be. That mountain, that ocean, that sunset is eagerly waiting to be restored, to be made new. And so this is one passage that you could see contradicting that the earth is destroyed by fire. But then you come to a passage like this in 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 10 through 13, and it says this: "But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, and then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed. Since all these things are thus to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be to live in lives of holiness and godliness, waiting for the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be set on fire and dissolved, and the heavenly bodies will melt as they burn. But according to his promise, we are waiting for the new heavens and the new earth in which righteousness dwells." And so Peter here seems to think that this all ends by fire. And so Paul's saying, hey, no, creation's going to be redeemed, creation's going to be restored, and Peter's like, it's going to burn by fire. So how do you reconcile these two? What's the right answer? It's not that easy. But I do believe that there's wisdom that we can draw together and make sense of all of this. We could presume that the type of transformation from the old order, we could presume that there's some type of transformation from the old order during the destruction of the old order. Regardless, I think biblical orthodoxy allows for us to have some continuity from the old order to the new order. Perhaps the judgment laid out in 2 Peter 3 is more of a cleansing than a total destruction. Personally, this is kind of where I would land. Do I believe that God is going to remake things? Yes. Do I believe he's going to destroy things? Absolutely. It's kind of what the Bible oftentimes uses when it talks about fire, is that it purifies. Not that the fire is going to just totally destroy the earth, but that the fire and the judgment on the earth, what it can do is cleanse and purify and remake and renew what was once broken. But here's what we can say for certain. There will be a whole new reality that we live in. There will be a whole new reality that we live in. A new kind of existence that's ridden from all of the negatives of the first world will be gone. There will no longer be a taint of sin that's in our world. We will no longer see its blemishes. We will no longer see, regardless if it's this earth renewed or something else, what we can see is that we will live in an entirely new reality. In the New Jerusalem, all things will be made new, and it will be beautiful, so beautiful that the only imagery that John could give us is he says, hey, the New Jerusalem will be like a bride dressed for her husband. Hey, you know what I've never seen? I've never seen a bride winging it on her wedding day. I've just never seen that happen. I've never seen her attempting new makeup. I've never seen attempting new hairdos. I've never seen, hey, maybe this dress. No, I've never seen that from a bride on her wedding day. No, it usually starts at 6 a.m., right? The hair and the makeup and the jewelry and the dress. I mean, it just starts early. There's a lot of intentionality that goes into it. And it's just not apples to apples. It's not fair. It's not equal. Right, for us grooms in the room, that wasn't the case. I was not getting up at 6 a.m. to make sure my eyeliner looked good. That's not how my 6 a.m. went on my wedding day. But the brides, they're up early with an extreme intentionality to look beautiful. Right, for me as the groom, I had to be at the venue at 2:00 for pictures. And I didn't need to start getting ready till about 1:00, right? And that's me. That was me trying. I did my hair and I lined up my beard that I had at the time. It wasn't a beautiful beard, but I lined it up. I put my clothes on, and here I am. I'm ready. I'm done. But the bride does way more than that. And here in the story of the Bible is that our bridegroom faithfully serves the bride this way. It's a reversal that the bridegroom, with an extreme intentionality, prepares for the bride, this beautiful place. Picking back up in verse 3, I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. And he will live with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever." Like, this is it. This is the crux, right? I mean, the crux of our inheritance is seen right here, that we will be with God forever. I mean, the emphasis of this chunk of Scripture is that it's God with us. Do you see it in verse 4? 3 times, among them, among them, among them. What is John trying to show us about the new heaven? It is that God will be among them. Paradise isn't as much about a place as it is about a presence. Paradise isn't as much about a place as it's about a presence. It's why Jesus got to say to the thief on the cross, "Today you will be with me in paradise." It was about Jesus' presence. And so, when we see that it'll be God with us once again, there'll be no more separation, no more distance, no more mediation, no more veils. He will dwell among us forever. And that's really the point of these last 2 chapters. It's the restoration and the redemption of all things. You know what I found really interesting in thinking about this passage is that when you look at the first 3 chapters of the Bible, Genesis 1, 2, and 3, is that where you get in the first 2 chapters is paradise. And then in chapter 3, you see paradise lost. And then you get into Revelation in the final 3 chapters of the Bible. What was, you see evil destroyed and paradise regained. So in the first 2 chapters of the Bible, you see no mention of sin and Satan. In the final 2 chapters, you see no mention of sin and Satan. If we could just get rid of those the first third chapter, right? No, we can't get rid of it. Why? Because it helps us make sense of reality, that we live in a sin-cursed world. But ultimately, we keep our eyes on the restoration and the redemption of all things, seen in Revelation 21 and 22. And in Revelation 22, what we see is that as God and man are together again, Revelation 22, the descriptors that you see, just homework, because we don't have time. Homework. Revelation 22, and then read Genesis 2, chapters 8, or Genesis chapter 2, verses 8 through 20. Revelation 22 and Genesis chapter 2, verses 8 through 20. Why? Because it's the descriptors of Eden, and they're identical. That what you see in God redeeming and restoring himself with mankind forever is that you see Eden come back into the story. Except this time it's not a garden, it's a city. The New Jerusalem, the descriptors are that of Eden. And as amazing as heaven will be, one of the things that people have mentioned or commented on over the years about heaven is that there won't be tears in heaven. But John here in Revelation 21 debunks that. Right? It's because John says in Revelation 21, he says that he will wipe away every tear from their eyes. How do you wipe away tears that aren't there? No, there's this acknowledgement that there will be tears in heaven. And they could be there for a variety of reasons. And there could be a variety of ways to try to explain that. But what I love about that in that same breath, in that same verse, is that John says, as he wipes away every tear from their eyes, he's acknowledging that as those are wiped away and our eyes see clearly once more, they will never, ever, 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 ever look on things like sin, death, evil, pain, sorrow. Crying will be no more at that point. As he wipes away the tears, your eyes will never, ever see death again. Never see the effects of sin again. And this is what we're headed for. We're headed for a day and a time where there will be no more evening headline news articles that tear us to pieces. There will be no more phone calls that ruin your day, your week, your year. Like, that's never happening again in the New Jerusalem. You know, this is what we're headed towards. Picking back up verse 5, and the one sitting on the throne said, look, I am making everything new. And then he said to me, write this down, for what I tell you is trustworthy and true. And he also said, it is finished. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To all who are thirsty, I will give freely from the springs of the water of life. All who are victorious will inherit these blessings, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. Like I said, we have been venturing through this book for 2 months now. And it's verse 7 right there. It is the reason why I wanted to preach this in 2024. It is my heart. What I wanted you to see for all those who are victorious, that you are holding and possessing a victory. That as Jesus conquers and he offers an inheritance, that we're co-heirs with him, that his victory is our victory. His conquering is your conquering, right? I mean, what we get to see and what we get to believe about the end of the book is that Jesus conquers, that Jesus wins. And if Jesus wins and we're followers of him, then we win. Then we win. Like there's who in all the earth would dare try to take away your inheritance when that is your Father? When God himself is your heavenly Father, who would dare try to condemn you? I mean, Paul makes that argument in Romans 8 when he talks about how much that God loves you. He's like, who would try to bring a charge against you if he's for you? And if he's for you, who can be against you? If this is the reality that you're living in, if this is what is headed for you, and this is the inheritance, who on earth could tamper with your inheritance? I'm not saying that this world isn't broken. No, I think Revelation bears and sheds light on that all throughout the 20 chapters. It acknowledges that there's a lot of broken, a lot of evil, a lot of darkness, and a lot of sin. And in all that, you see God's wrath poured out on those things. Right? So we don't live in a bubble and try to deny and live like this world's just hunky-dory. No, we have real beliefs that what's out in the world is broken and it's dark and it's evil. And so when I say, fix your eyes on heaven, that doesn't mean you get to walk out these doors with a blindfold on. Well, no, I'm headed towards eternity. No, the call for us is, in the disciples' prayer, to see heaven come to earth, to on earth as it is in heaven, right? I want to bring the goodness of God into the world because it's dark and it's broken and it's sinful and it's evil. I want to see God's kingdom penetrate this world in real ways and offer people real life. And so we don't deny that it's broken. And so I'm not saying it's not dark and scary. I'm simply sharing for the followers in this room, followers of Jesus in this room. You're a conqueror. Jesus has conquered, and he's invited you to follow him now and forever. Would that give you a sense of freedom in 2024? Hey, go vote. That matters. I believe it matters. Go vote. Get involved. Try to see change in the world. But ultimately know where your citizenship ultimately lies, and it's in heaven with God forever. And allow you to be free and to walk in freedom this year, no matter how dark or bleak or scary it might feel or seem. Trust and believe the promises of the book. This is Revelation.